A dark-haired man tells Croya she finally has a use for the family. Her mission is revealed: become the fake pharaoh for Diello Argenta. She must seduce Diello, isolate his position, and ensure her family's prosperity. Overwhelmed by her cruel fate, she breaks down in tears. A carriage wheel turns, carrying her toward her new life. She clutches her head in sudden, dawning horror. A voice from inside a grand carriage cries out in confusion. Staring at her reflection, she realizes with dread that she has been possessed. Reborn as the villainess Croya Alloz from a novel she read, she despairs at having been reincarnated into such a tragic character. She recalls the title of the dark R19 novel, The Three Ducal Houses. The novel's plot centers on three powerful houses and their heirs, chosen by a magical mark. To gain their full power, each heir must spend a night with their fated partner. This partner, a pharaoh, is essential. Choosing the wrong person curses the heir with incomplete power forever. She remembers her grim fate in the story. Croya is killed once the real pharaoh appears. Sitting in the carriage, her expression hardens with determination. She refuses to passively accept her character's tragic death. With newfound resolve, she decides to survive by rewriting the entire story. Steeling herself, she arrives at the magnificent Argenta estate. She meets the male lead, Diello Argenta, and is momentarily flustered by his presence. In a formal meeting, she requests a private audience with the Duke. At her request, Diello calmly dismisses his two guards. Once alone, she formally addresses Duke Diello Argenta. She startles him by declaring that she has not come to be his bride. Surprised, Diello asks if she intends to call off their engagement. She clarifies her purpose. She is a negotiator, here until his true pharaoh appears. Croya proposes a contract marriage to help him become head of his house, asking for revenge on her own family in return. Sipping his tea, he calmly asks her to clarify her terms. Their eyes lock in a tense, silent understanding as she confirms her plan. He astutely concludes that her proposal implies Duke Alloz has deceived him. Intrigued, he suggests they move their conversation somewhere more private. She silently acknowledges the grave political risk. Her revelation could easily spark a war. She moves across the room with quiet purpose. Her steps are firm as she walks toward him. He watches, perplexed, as she approaches with her hand raised. She holds up a small vial, much to his surprise. As he recognizes it as wound ointment, a brilliant magic erupts from the uncorked bottle. He jumps to his feet in shock as she reveals his name is engraved on her back. Showing him the mark, she explains that his name was forcibly carved onto her. As the ointment dissolves the magical brand, Diello is left speechless. She asks if this proves her deception, while he coldly assesses how badly his enemies have underestimated him. He realizes her family would kill her for this betrayal, but she continues speaking. She bluntly states that his reputation as the weakest heir is why their rivals are so bold. Looking up at him with a confident smile, she proposes a marriage for 1 year. She explains their contract marriage will serve as a shield against both their families. In return for her help, her one condition is his absolute protection. Diello falls silent, carefully considering her audacious deal. Taking her hand, he asks what he must do to earn her trust. She challenges him directly, stating it's his choice whether to turn this crisis into an opportunity. His hand tightens on his coat as he makes his decision. Pulling her into his arms, Diello accepts her proposal for marriage. Diello and Croya share an intimate romantic gaze. A new scene begins with someone taking a deliberate step forward. Diello asks his aide for confirmation, who reports that the name carved on Croya's back was indeed fake. He calmly notes that the mark is already fading after reacting to the healing ointment. He thoughtfully taps his pen, contemplating the situation. Flashing back to their deal, Croya proposes a 1-year marriage, offering herself as the key to deceive their rival families. Diello questions her assumption that he can regain power, stating he currently has none, but she insists it's not too late. She argues that if he were truly powerless, his enemies would have already abandoned him, expressing her faith in his potential and Argenta's intelligence network. She confidently presents herself as his best option. Thump, he sets his quill down, having made his decision. He muses that making a deal with an enemy is interesting, noting her changed demeanor. Diello reviews the marriage terms, which demand 50% of the income from several territories be transferred to House Alloz as Croya's allowance. He reads further demands for nights and monthly visits, cynically noting her father's feigned concern. He calmly signs the agreement. He summons his headmaid, PL, and instructs her to personally serve the future Duchess. With a cunning smile, Diello gives a final order. Give the Alose family everything they ask for. A maid remarks on the insane extravagance of the preparations, telling Croya she will be the center of attention. Now dressed in a fine white gown, Croya calmly agrees. She notes that their facade will convince everyone they married for love. PL simply smiles in knowing silence. The narration box reveals PL is not just the head maid, but also a high-ranking senior operative. Her true identity is revealed. She is Argenta's cleaner, tasked with eliminating all threats to the family. Croya worries, recalling she never finished reading the original novel. She remembers a crucial detail. When the fake pharaoh is exposed, PL is the one who executes her. Staring at her reflection, Croya decides to test PL, suspecting she knows about the secret arrangement. PL adjusts Croya's gown, her expression unreadable. Croya realizes Diello must have brought PL into their confidence, likely to protect her. In a moment of lightheartedness, they agree to work together. Though PL is smiling, Croya remains on edge, feeling the maid's intense alertness. Looking out a window, Croya is captivated by the view of the infinite sea. PL confirms it's Croya's first time seeing the famed waters. The crest of the flame family, Argenta, is shown as the guardians of the sea. The crest of the water family, Alose, is shown as the protectors of the endless forest. An ancient oath established these sacred defensive zones. PL asks Croya how the sea compares to her family's forest. Croya smiles genuinely, admitting that it's beautiful. PL remarks that she'd heard people from Allos tire of water. Croya recalls that while her family wields water, the original Croya was barely able to use her powers. Deciding to test her own abilities, she reaches for a nearby glass. She gasps in shock at the power she feels. The liquid from a bottle astonishingly forms a flowing water dragon, elegantly pouring itself into the glass. Croya is stunned, realizing her control is far more powerful than the original character's ever was. A brilliant light emanates from her outstretched hand. A maid interrupts her reverie, announcing it's time for the banquet. Croya walks alone down a grand, empty hall. She nervously touches her veil, feeling the weight of this empire-shaking marriage. Beneath her veil, she feels confident that even her own father won't suspect their scheme. She walks toward the altar where Duke Diello awaits. Diello turns to greet his bride, formally addressing her as Lady Croya Allos. Diello reminds Croya that they must act like the sweetest couple today. Smiling confidently, Croya asks if he thinks he can pull it off. He touches his cheek, slightly flustered by her bold question. A flashback reveals the original Diello was pure and easily overwhelmed by Croya's whims, but today, he must be different. Thinking to herself, Croya resolves not to give Duke Alose any reason to lecture her about failing to control her husband. With a soft flutter, a single petal drifts past as Diello gazes at her. She confidently makes a deal. She will lead, and he only needs to follow. The doors open, announcing the bride from the ducal house of Allos. Croya walks down the aisle, a serene smile on her face as the crowd applauds. Guests murmur in shock at the union between Argenta and Allos, but Croya calmly notes that she can hear every word. She overhears concerns about House Cartiel, now that Lord Siete is in charge, and she wonders about it herself. A narration explains that under Siete, one of the 5 strongest leaders in history, House Cartiel is in a golden age, with Siete's power growing, and 2 great houses now joined by marriage, the political landscape shifts. It is understandable that the other nobles are concerned, as House Cartiel's standing has become uncertain. Duke Diello Argenta makes his grand entrance, causing the crowd of ladies to swoon. From behind her veil, Croya thinks that he has grown into an almost unrecognizable man. The sound of their steps echoes as they approach each other down the aisle. He greets her simply as Croya, and she responds formally to Duke Argenta. Diello reaches out to take her veil. He gently lifts the sheer fabric, revealing her face. As he embraces her, the narration declares he is the man who will become her husband. He leans in close, preparing to kiss her. Even knowing it is an act, she feels a flicker of something more. Looking into her eyes, he formally asks Croya Alose to be his bride. He moves closer, their faces just inches apart. She stops him, her eyes wide with surprise as she whispers his name. Croya states it would be wrong to give him her first kiss when he doesn't have feelings for her. He counters, telling her not to think of it as him taking it. He firmly pulls her in closer. Diello brings her into a deep embrace, ready to seal their vows with a kiss. A young man and several ladies watch the romantic scene with blushing excitement. Leaning close, he whispers to her, "More passion." A sly smile plays on her lips as she fully commits to their performance. A sudden flash of realization hits her. They share a romantic moment, surrounded by flowers just before their lips meet. The camera focuses on their elegant embrace and her flowing wedding gown. Before the entire crowd, they share a deep and convincing kiss. She pulls back slightly, flushed and breathless. With a gentle smile, Diello softly asks if his performance was to her liking. He pulls her into a second, more passionate kiss. Their passionate kiss captivates everyone watching. The ladies in attendance swoon at the romantic display. Guests gossip in disbelief over how two sworn enemy families became society's most celebrated couple overnight. A group of nobles agree that you can truly never know what people are capable of. Their passionate kiss continues, a perfect performance for their audience. The scene shifts to a peaceful sunset, where Diello stands alone on a balcony. His quiet moment is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. A man in a red uniform reports that Diello's appearance caused a major stir in high society, just as predicted. Diello credits Croya's enthusiasm, and his aide agrees that Lady Croya Alloze also captured everyone's attention. His aide reports with a smile that most of the gossip is about him. Diello reflects that because people only remember him as a timid child, their romantic performance must seem genuine. Thump, his aide, bows, confirming that rumors of them being a sweet couple are spreading rapidly. Diello orders his aide, Casillas, to carefully fan the flames of the rumors, who agrees to relay the message. He stands alone, deep in thought as he considers their next move. His mind flashes back to their wedding day and the kiss they shared. He recalls the confident, knowing smile Croya wore beneath her veil. He remembers the intimate details of their staged kiss. The memory of his hand on her cheek and her passionate response lingers. He covers his mouth, realizing with a start that he wasn't the only one acting. He realizes the Croya he thought he knew was just a facade, and now he wonders about her true self. He remembers her as a radiant bride, confidently lifting her veil. He contemplates the fact that she chose to reveal her true self to him. He trails off, his thoughts left unspoken as the scene shifts. In a grand hall, the household maids and servants go about their duties. As she soaks in a flower-filled bath, Croya finds it strange that the staff is so happy about the wedding. She rises slightly, musing that the staff has no idea how difficult she can truly be. Seeing Piel's gentle smile, she decides it's not so bad that everyone is happy about the engagement. Argentia's front line is fully aware of their engagement. Piel continues attending to her, gently pouring scented oil into the bath. Piel watches her with a calm, unreadable expression. Croya realizes their performance must fool everyone, especially the insiders and her own father, Duke Alloz. She decides to test Piel, asking how their engagement ceremony looked from the perspective of someone who knew the truth. Piel reassures her, stating that even to her, their performance looked convincingly real. Croya takes a quiet moment to process Piel's reassuring words. Suddenly, the sound of rushed footsteps breaks the calm. A maid bursts into the room, shouting, "Emergency!" Piel's expression becomes grim as a dire announcement is made. Sector 3 of the Infinite Sea has been breached. Now dressed, Croya demands to know what's going on, and Piel promises to look into it immediately. Piel opens the door to the hall, where Casillas is already waiting. Croya calls out to her, asking Lady Piel to explain the situation. Hearing Diello already inquired, she wonders with suspicion if he somehow anticipated this would happen. A maid reports the defensive line has collapsed, and Piel asks if it has fallen completely. As the maid hesitates, Croya crosses her arms, resolving to assert her authority as the Duchess of the house. An image reveals a massive force of sea monsters attacking, with the maid explaining the first of 2 units was unusually large. The maid continues, reporting that the second wave of monsters was also overwhelming, causing the defense to collapse instantly. Piel deduces they were vastly outnumbered, and the maid confirms it seemed several monster groups had joined forces. Croya recalls this event from the novel, suddenly becoming suspicious of how a mere servant could know so much about battlefield affairs. The maid explains that the news has already spread throughout the estate, with all the knights and staff saying the same thing. She continues her report, stating that a man named Roa took full responsibility, charging headfirst into the horde. His sacrifice held the line, but Croya is stunned to hear him called a criminal as Piel orders an emergency report written. As the maids depart, She continues to puzzle over why a hero would be labeled a criminal. She confronts Piel and Casillas, demanding to know why a man who sacrificed himself is being condemned. She finds it deeply unsettling that no one is honoring his sacrifice, instead treating it as a simple expectation. Piel explains the cold truth. He failed his duty, and his sacrifice was merely a way to avoid a far harsher punishment under Argenta's law. Piel notes this harsh code must be strange for Croa, as it's unlike anything in her homeland of Alos. Piel then turns to her, stating that in Argentia, they abide by an absolute, unforgiving code of conduct. In a tense moment, Piel presents scissors to her hair with the words, "Do it," while Croa thinks back, "or don't." She has a shocking realization. Do it or don't were the very first words used to describe Argentia in the original novel. In Argentia, failure to do one's duty requires a sacrifice of life, and even then, one dies a criminal. Diello holds Argenta's greatest strength, an overwhelming might seen in a fiery vision. This power is how Roa likely went berserk to hold off the horde of monsters. Croa clenches her dress, a look of dawning comprehension on her face. Smiling gently, Piel compliments her for grasping the situation so quickly. Croa realizes Diello's past weakness and Argenta's ruthless customs were all part of his plan. Thinking of his gentle nature, she feels it must have been painful for him and whispers his name. A memory of Diello's kind smile flashes in her mind. The scene shifts to Diello at his desk, silently writing. He reads a report, confirming Roa went berserk using Argenta's power and died. Diello asks about the body, which Casillas confirms is recoverable, and orders him buried near the infinite sea. Casillas reports that Croa seems surprised to hear Roa was a sinner, and Diello quietly processes the information. Thump. Dismissing his aide, Diello sends Casillas on his way. Leaning back in his chair, Diello tilts his head up in quiet contemplation. He states that they will need a new commander for Sector 3. A small, knowing laugh escapes him as he covers his mouth. In another room, Croa sits alone, gazing out a bright window. She realizes with a start that her wedding is just around the corner. With a confident smile, she seems ready to face what's coming. Piel wheels in a massive stack of documents, leaving Croa speechless with shock. Piel explains the documents detail the house's full-scale operations, and Croa reacts with disbelief. Expressing hesitation to know Argenta's inner workings, Croa is told by Piel that she must know everything. Piel explains that a mistress also manages the house's public image and internal affairs, much to Croa's shock. Only then, Piel concludes, can she properly fulfill her role. Croa realizes this means being given access to everything, including all their dirty laundry and darkest secrets. She sits opposite Piel, silently absorbing the immensity of her new duties. Croa worries about Diello's immense trust, wondering if he forgot she's a fake who is supposed to step aside. Looking at Piel earnestly, Croa asks if she is against this transfer of power. Piel beams, saying she fully agrees with the decision, leaving Croa utterly bewildered. As Piel suggests they start with the Southern Division, Croa shouts her name, feeling like she's being scammed. A group of 4 women are gathered around a table with cups and plates in front of them. The woman on the left is holding a cell phone. The woman next to her is wearing a jean jacket and a brown hat. They all appear to be engaged in conversation. The setting looks like a cafe or a restaurant. She reflects that for someone with a gentle nature like Diello, this path must have been painful. The scene changes to a grand estate, where guests and a carriage gather outside. Onlookers marvel at the magnificent building constructed just for the wedding, calling it a truly historic moment. Diello stands ready in his ornate white uniform as an attendant adjusts his cape. Duke Aloes greets Diello, who confirms that the wedding preparations are proceeding well. Patting his shoulder, Duke Aloes asks Diello to take good care of his daughter, despite her shortcomings. Diello smiles warmly and simply says, "Of course." Duke Aloes proposes they bury their family's feud and welcome his daughter, to which Diello reassures him. The 2 men part ways, but as the Duke leaves, the atmosphere darkens ominously. Diello's smile vanishes as he lowers his head in somber thought. At the wedding venue, guests whisper that Duke Aloes is approaching, and the ceremony will start soon. Duke Aloes arrives, flanked by his entourage, a confident smirk on his face. 2 nobles greet him with deep bows, congratulating him on the wonderful and celebratory union. Duke Aloes thanks them for their attention, but excuses himself to take a seat. He effortlessly summons a wave of water, showcasing the power of the Alose family to the astonishment of onlookers. The water transforms into a shimmering, magical waterway, signaling that all is ready for the bride and groom. Diello stands tall and composed in his grand, white ceremonial attire. Croya appears in her breathtaking wedding gown, holding a bouquet of white roses. Her steps echo as she walks down the aisle toward Diello, who waits at the altar. They stand before each other under the bright sun, ready to be wed. Croya stands alone, silently contemplating the wedding scene. Duke Alose smirks knowingly while Croya realizes her deception with Diello is still a secret. Looking at the empty seats, she thinks of their absence, just as she expected. Remembering the original story, she suspects her father, Duke Alose, killed Diello's parents and wonders if Diello knows. Seeing his confusion, she concludes he is unaware he just married the daughter of his enemy. Feeling pity, a tiny, determined Croya vows to help Diello kill her father. The officiant begins the wedding ceremony, surprising both Diello and Croya. Declaring them husband and wife, the officiant invites them to share their vow with a kiss. A magical arc of water forms above them, blessing their union. Diello gently leans in, preparing to kiss his bride. A gentle smile plays on his lips as he moves closer. A narration explains the hidden Argenta family crest, a seal on their power that only the true head can properly remove, and Croya resolves to protect it with Diello. His hand gently cups her cheek as he calls her his lovely bride, startling her. He pulls her into a passionate and unexpected kiss. Amidst a bloom of white roses, their wedding kiss deepens. Parting from the kiss, he looks at her lovingly, thanking her for marrying him. Swoosh! He sweeps her into his arms as a guest gasps in delight. Cradled in his arms, she quietly studies her new husband. Overcome with emotion, a tiny Croya again vows to help Diello avenge his parents. Their ornate wedding carriage awaits their departure from the grand estate. Diello announces their departure as Duke Alose wishes them a pleasant honeymoon. Diello helps Croya into their waiting carriage. The driver gives the order, and the honeymoon journey begins. Duke Alose watches them leave, a calm and unreadable expression on his face. Inside the carriage, they hold hands, agreeing the wedding was a complete success. Croya smiles playfully, stating her next goal is keeping Diello's purity intact. Blushing, Diello covers his mouth, flustered by her bold comment. Their hands remain tightly clasped together. Arriving at their destination, Croya gasps in awe at the sight. She marvels at the magnificent golden villa, built solely for their honeymoon. He asks if she likes it, promising an even better view from the upper floor. Excited, she asks to go immediately, and he happily agrees. The maids watch speechless as Diello romantically carries his bride toward the villa. The view from their villa is a breathtaking blend of sea and forest. Croya confirms the villa is on the border between their two lands, and Diello affirms it. Held close by Diello, she smiles and agrees with his plans. A maid confirms their luggage is ready, and Croya realizes maids from her homeland are watching her. As darkness looms symbolically, Diello suggests they rest before taking a walk. Croya brightly agrees, delighted by the idea. The scene transitions to a peaceful, starry night sky. A magical butterfly settles on the ornate doors to their suite. In their room, Croya sighs that being watched is tiring, and Diello agrees their gazes are piercing. In a series of panels, they both repeatedly acknowledge the piercing gazes of their observers. Swirling his wine, Diello smirks, once again remarking on the piercing gazes. Croya raises her glass, smiling as she agrees with his assessment. They share a knowing look, both feeling the pressure of being watched. Diello's calm expression belies the intensity of the scrutiny they are under. They clink their wine glasses together in a private toast. After a taste, Croya finds the wine both sweet and fragrant. She asks for more wine, and he readily pours her another glass. Blushing slightly, Croya suggests they have one more glass of wine. Diello informs her that, unfortunately, they just drank the last of it. A chibi flashback shows Diello having finished the bottle himself. Sharing a light-hearted moment, Croya and Diello smile at each other. Diello gives her a knowing, seductive smirk. His hand rests firmly on the bed beside him. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Diello warmly invites her to come here. Croya hesitates for a moment before moving onto the bed. They lie side by side atop the covers, facing each other. Croya turns serious, reminding him that the real pharaoh arrives in 2 months. Diello explains he kept their contract term vague to avoid suspicion, and as Croya realizes she must leave soon, he moves closer. He looks into her eyes and asks if she sees something strange in his. Gently touching his face, Kroya is told her eyes are beautiful, catching her by surprise before he compares them to the sea. He insists he can compliment her, even if they aren't a real couple. And though she protests the comparison, he wins the point. As she holds his face, he looks at her with a gentle, thoughtful expression. She remarks on how peaceful their honeymoon is, and he replies that he's glad she's satisfied, addressing her as Miss Kroya. She playfully suggests that, to be convincing, they should practice being closer by having him use her first name, Kroya Aloze. She chides him for using her family name, so he blushingly corrects himself, simply saying Kroya. After he says her name again, she declares it perfect. He then states that while he'll keep his promise, they must spend the night together to deceive their observers. With the stern maids watching, they agree this is the only way. Kroya nervously reveals she has a favor to ask, and Diello questions what it could be. After she whispers her request, a shocked Diello asks if she's sure, but she insists she has to do it. Lying back, she begins to tell him about a saying in Argentia. He listens intently, his expression unreadable in the dim light. She tells him that if he's going to do it, he must do it right, and he quietly agrees before moving toward her. He gently leans over her in the bed. As he pulls her into an embrace, she lets out a soft gasp. The scene transitions to a beautiful, sunlit garden gazebo the next morning. A brown-haired maid serves Kroya tea and pastries as she sits elegantly at a table. The maid explains the lightly brewed laurel tea is meant to help with fatigue. Kroya thanks the maid and asks her to take some tea to the hardworking Diello, an order the maid accepts before her and the other staff. Sipping her tea, Kroya sighs in relief, thinking that with Diello's retainers gone, she can finally breathe. Her peaceful moment is interrupted as she hears a faint sound and turns her head. She spots a small, gray-haired boy crying by the gazebo steps. Wah! The boy runs toward her, openly sobbing. He stops suddenly right before her, looking up in distress. The brown-haired maid steps in, sternly warning the boy not to approach so recklessly and asking who he is. The terrified child grabs onto Kroya's dress, pleading for help. The maid turns to a thoughtful Kroya and asks for instructions. After a brief pause, Kroya offers a kind smile, inviting the boy closer and asking him what's wrong. The boy rushes into her arms, crying that he can't find his mommy. As she comforts him, he explains through hiccups that his mother came with him. Kroya asks her maid if any servants brought a child, but the maid confirms no one from Argentia did. The boy wails for his mother again, clutching desperately onto Kroya. Kroya gently holds the child, calmly telling the little one not to cry. While her maid voices safety concerns, Kroya overrules her, declaring she will help the child find his mother. She smiles with serene confidence, stating that no one on either side would have a reason to harm her. Kroya smiles warmly, confident in her compassionate decision. The brown-haired maid observes her lady with a stoic expression. Wah! The sound of the child's desperate crying startles the maid. Waving off her maid's concern, Kroya explains the child is just shy and she will go alone. As they walk across a stone bridge, she gently asks if he has calmed down now. He remains silent for a moment before suddenly pointing toward a building, surprising her. She asks if he found his mother, but the boy simply stares back without a word. A flicker of suspicion crosses Kroya's face as she studies the silent child. Walking onward, she feels certain her loyal maid, PL, is following them from a distance. The boy suddenly erupts with magical energy, calling her Lady Kroya Aloze and accusing her of being her family's watchdog. Her eyes narrow as she coolly confirms that, of course, she investigated him. Kroya demands he show proof of his authority, to which the boy asks how. She retorts that anything proving she spent the night with the Duke will suffice, and he calmly agrees. Remembering her passionate night with Diello, she thinks it was a good thing she kept proof and touches her neck. She reveals the faint mark on her collarbone, asking if this proof will be enough for him. A woman waves from a distance, and the boy shouts for his mommy, leaving Kroya momentarily stunned by the sudden reunion. The boy rushes forward and happily embraces the woman he calls his mother. Kroya watches them reunite, dryly noting that his mommy appeared right on cue. She realizes with certainty that they had come specifically to check on her. This development surprises her as she recalls that in the original story there was no scene of Aloe spying, and Kroya had only planned to deceive Diello without actually consummating the marriage. She nervously touches the ornate brooch at her collar. A brief, intimate flashback shows Diello kissing her neck, In the flashback, she lies beneath him and asks if the traces he's leaving are clear enough. He confirms the traces are definitely still there as he holds her close. Back in the present, she touches her cheek, her thoughts consumed by that man. Overcome with a deep blush, she covers her face with both hands. The scene transitions to Croya and her maids enjoying a pleasant time in the villa's garden. From a window above, Diello watches her silently. In the garden, Croya laughs brightly while chatting with her attendants. Diello's expression remains unreadable and serious as he continues to observe her. He thinks to himself that he must prepare for any unexpected situations. Later, Croya approaches Diello in his room, stating she has a favor to ask. He wonders if her request is because she understands how thorough the Duke of Alose is. Looking down from his window, he questions if her actions are driven by her lingering identity as an Alose. He presses his hand against the glass, his gaze locked on her below. A symbolic image portrays her standing between two powerful figures, an unyielding wall and a strong shield. In profile, she thinks that since she still can't fully trust him, she has another plan. She smiles confidently, deciding she'll place him inside Argentia's protective fence. Diello contemplates her intentions, hoping she was sincere in her marriage proposal if she truly plans to join Argentia, but preparing for deception if she remains loyal to Alose. That evening, a quiet sigh escapes someone on a balcony overlooking the estate. Sitting alone, Croya reflects that asking for proof was far too demanding. She blushes, wondering what kind of proof he could have possibly been expecting from her. The door creaks open as Diello peeks in with a smile, asking if he may come in. Surprised by his formal manner, Croya thinks it's odd for him to be so cautious before entering their room and tells him of course he can. Seated on the bed, he apologizes for attending to urgent business, but she reassures him his absence makes their act more convincing to Alose's spies. She adds that it would seem strange for her, a newcomer, to be seen entering his office anyway. He catches her off guard by revealing he saw her looking up toward it, making her ask, huh? A flashback shows her in the garden, looking up at the villa like a sad new bride, anxiously waiting for her husband to return. He explains that while her act made him look like a bad husband, it successfully prevented Duke Alose from suspecting their marriage was rocky. The narration reveals the boy was indeed sent to check for yesterday's traces of their wedding night. As a vision of a young boy with glowing hands appears, Croya reacts with disgust, relieved to learn it was someone else and not the Duke. In a cute chibi form, Croya realizes she misunderstood the Duke of Alose, while Diello dismisses it, reminding himself the Duke is their enemy. Diello states they've passed their first crisis, leaving a confused Croya to question what he means. Diello looks down at the glowing mark on his chest, thinking that the Duke is waiting for him to get rid of it. An explanation reveals the mark's clarity is tied to sincerity and will remain so until the real pharaoh arrives, a fact Diello now understands. Diello looks into her eyes, reassuring her that the mark will stay the same until Pharaoh's appearance. As candles flicker, Diello says he needs to be clear about one thing, and Croya asks what it is. He asks who in Argentia knows their secret, and she confirms that her maid, PL, definitely does. Diello lets out a small sound of acknowledgement upon hearing this. Croya smugly explains she isn't dull enough to miss it, adding that he'd be in trouble with a dense partner and confirms PL's knowledge. Looking at him intently, Croya asks who in Argentia she can trust without question. Diello smiles warmly, telling her not to worry as everyone on the 4th floor is trustworthy. Seeing the silhouettes of the household staff, Croya is shocked to realize they all know her secret. Diello winks reassuringly, but Croya wonders if it's truly okay for her to be so naive. A hand conjures a bright, swirling flame. Holding the magical fire, Diello explains that the ability users on this floor are true Argentans who know betrayal is foolish. He clenches his fist, extinguishing the magical flame. Croya counters that successful betrayal is called justice, but Diello calmly acknowledges her worries. Touching a candelabra, he promises she'll see things differently once she understands his people. The next day, outside the Grand Mansion, Croya asks her maid, PL, what she is holding. PL presents an official-looking contract bearing multiple elegant signatures. PL explains the contract ensures departing servants cannot leak secrets, and asks Croya to get the signature. Croya hesitates, questioning if it's right for her, a contractual wife, to handle such an important family document. PL states the person is already waiting to sign, and Croya agrees to let them in. Reading the contract, Croya is stunned by its magical penalty. Should someone named Myrta break it, Diello's flames will personally burn him. She turns to PL, asking if such a harsh contract is common. PL confirms that while not common, it is not unheard of, and she has rarely seen one broken. Croya confirms her understanding that this is an Argentia tradition, to which PL agrees. Leaning over her desk, Croya finds it strange to imagine the gentle Diello personally burning someone. PL leads Croya down a long, ornate hallway. Guiding her toward guarded doors, PL announces, "This way." As the doors open, Croya is surprised to see a man waiting inside a lavish room. A smiling, brown-haired man in a green suit gestures for them to come in. Croya and PL stand before the man, and PL prepares to unveil the items she is carrying. PL reveals a quill and a dagger, causing Croya to question the unusual pairing. Croya observes the dagger and the feather quill, noting the conspicuous absence of ink. The departing servant, Mirta, is asked if he knows how to sign such a contract. Croya stares at the inkless pen and dagger on the silver tray. She realizes that this must be the strange signing method PL had mentioned earlier. PL presents the contract to the man named Mirta as Croya looks on. Mirta laughs, remarking that he never expected he would be the one to sign this particular contract. Mirta declares it's time to begin, and PL reluctantly hands him the dagger. With a sharp prick, the man draws blood from his own finger, shocking Croya. As he begins to sign, Croya understands with dawning horror that blood serves as the ink. Watching him sign in blood, Croya winces, thinking how much it must hurt. PL announces that the signing is complete, and Croya commends them on a job well done. PL addresses the servant by his name, Mirta. She holds up a paper cutout of a person, while stating that she doesn't believe it will ever come to this. She presents the paper doll to a confused Mirta and Croya, warning what happens if the oath is broken. The paper doll erupts in flames, as PL ominously warns that he will be brought back to this place. A silhouetted Mirta is warned to remember his oath. Mirta quietly acknowledges the warning, promising to keep it in mind. Bowing, Mirta thanks Croya for her presence, and from off-panel, PL expresses it was an honor to meet her. Croya wonders aloud why an Argentan servant is leaving. With a pleasant smile, Croya wishes Mirta well, and bids him goodbye. Mirta offers a subtle, knowing smile in return. PL informs Croya she is seeing Mirta out, and Croya agrees. Croya reflects that this was an internal Argentan affair she shouldn't have interfered with. Holding the sealed contract, she hesitates with a lingering thought. PL reveals that Mirta originally served Diello, prompting a small sound of realization from Croya. Croya concludes that Mirta must have grown quite attached to Diello. She sympathizes with Diello, thinking it must have been difficult for him to order the contract. In his office, Diello hears someone announce Mirta's contract has arrived and tells them to enter. Croya playfully peeks in, presenting the magic contract to Diello with a wink. A surprised Diello looks up from his desk and says her name. As Croya asks if he's surprised, Diello admits he is, noting she handled the matter quickly. Leaning over his desk, Diello sincerely thanks Croya for her help. Croya notices an ornate dagger lying on Diello's desk. Diello picks up the dagger, his expression grimly determined. He pricks his own finger, drawing a drop of blood onto the tip. Using the blood as ink, he begins signing the contract with a quill. As he signs, the contract erupts in magical flames, finalizing the oath. Diello holds his hand over the document, sensing the contract has been sealed. Croya mentions hearing Mirta served him, which Diello confirms while cleaning his bloody finger. Diello admits that Mirta's departure is very unfortunate. Placing the contract on the desk, Croya advises that one must be certain of success before attempting betrayal. Diello assures her there will be no problems, adding a hopeful, "I hope so." He clasps his hands together, his wedding ring visible. He rests his chin on his hands, lost in thought. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he looks up. The camera focuses on a large stack of documents on his desk. Diello stands, his expression resolute as a soft click sounds. He looks down at the newly signed contract lying alone on his desk. A green-haired man in a formal uniform arrives, asking if they should give chase. Diello's hand ignites as he clarifies their target, those swayed by Cartiel. Holding the flame, he orders the man to report any contact with Cartiel, declaring he will handle it himself. The green-haired man salutes crisply, acknowledging his orders. Diello covers his face, murmuring about the certainty of success. He smirks, thinking his enemy's misplaced confidence in his unstable fake marriage provides the perfect opportunity. As the carriage departs, he concludes it's time to root out traitors, whom Argentia's code does not forgive. A guard rushes in with an urgent report for His Highness. A panting messenger in a red cape reports unusual movement in the fourth zone of the infinite sea. Diello's expression darkens as he questions the report of the fourth zone. The messenger confirms that Commander Radius is urgently requesting his presence, shocking Diello. Realizing his uncle is involved, Diello clenches his fist and demands to be taken there immediately. The scene returns to Croya, now holding a stack of paperwork. PL reports the trouble in the fourth zone, prompting Croya to wonder if it's connected to the previous raid. Looking out at the sea, Croya reflects that Diello is a strong and capable leader despite his outward appearance. She sighs softly, continuing to gaze thoughtfully at the water. She picks up a pen, finding this sudden turn of events surprising. At her desk, Croya learns that Diello left for the site without a moment to spare. Finishing her work, Croya smiles confidently, certain he will return safely. She sighs, realizing her hope for a quiet day was misplaced. Holding a new assignment, Croya asks PL about the shadow recipient, and PL explains the shadows deliver provisions to the families of fallen Argentan retainers. PL reveals this quarter's recipients are the family of a sinner named Roa, for whom the Duke ordered special consideration. A memory reveals Roa was the knight who sacrificed himself to defend the fourth sector of the infinite sea. Croya realizes she misjudged the Duke, understanding now that he wasn't being cruel. As PL praises Diello's character, Croya asks what kind of support the shadows provide. PL details the extensive benefits, including land, housing, and lifelong financial support. The families also maintain deep loyalty, and Croya agrees the benefits are significant. Intrigued, Croya notes the advantages of being an Argentan and asks what the conditions are. A hand suddenly erupts in a swirl of magical fire. Peel holds the flame, explaining the primary condition is manifesting this fire ability. Peel asks if the Alos family retainers also have abilities matching their attributes. Croya confirms the Alize household employs water users, but notes the atmosphere is very different. She reflects that she never encountered harsh contracts or shadow support in her old home, where things felt much colder. A shadowy, weeping figure represents the sorrowful nature of the Aloze family's affairs. Croya concludes that the shadow system is a tradition unique to Argentia. Peel smiles, agreeing this is why the atmosphere here is so different from the other families. A sudden knock sounds, and as PL answers, Croya wonders who would have business with her. A brown-haired knight with a red cape enters the office, announcing his intrusion. The knight reports that the fourth sector is requesting additional troops, shocking Croya, who questions the need since Diello is already there. He confirms the request came directly from the Duke, surprising both Croya and PL. A cold realization dawns on Croya. She's struck by a powerful sense of déjà vu, recalling that this incident marks the death of Diello's uncle, Radius, and the start of a great crisis. The dreadful event is fated to happen just before the real Pharaoh's arrival. Croya asks about the size of the reinforcements, and the knight explains the battle is dragging on. He adds that the Duke requested enough forces to quickly end the engagement. While PL seems relieved, Croya's expression grows grim. She thinks to herself that they don't understand how badly the situation is escalating. Her mind races, knowing a veteran like Radius could only fall because of one reason: an unforeseen threat, a monster that uses water magic, something unheard of in Argenta's history. She remembers that this forces Radius to burn his own life force and go berserk. Distressed, Croya realizes that if she does nothing, the tragic original story will repeat itself. She recalls Radius as not only Diello's last living relative, but a pillar of Argentan military power, resolving that she cannot let him die. Clutching a document, she steels her resolve, knowing this isn't a whim. This is for her own future, she thinks, standing with determination. Croya firmly orders the knight to dispatch the additional troops immediately. She catches herself, realizing she's the only one who knows about the water monster and must be careful. With a composed smile, she wisely suggests the knights should determine the scale of the deployment. The knight bows, acknowledging her command. Turning away, Croya adds a final order: assemble an escort for her as well. Both the knight and PL are stunned into silence by her unexpected request. A brilliant aura of power begins to emanate from Croya. With a flick of her wrist, she effortlessly manipulates the water from a nearby teacup and vase. Croya elegantly commands swirling streams of water, revealing the true extent of her Elo's abilities. The knight stares in awe, finally understanding why reinforcements are needed, even with Diello present. Croya smiles brightly, declaring that an Aloze, who commands water, should be the one to go. The knight and PL bow deeply as he promises to report back after the meeting. For her own future, Croya watches with resolute eyes. Elsewhere, Diello clenches his teeth, vowing to stop the impending tragedy. He faces a monstrous entity, rising from a stormy sea. The beautiful ocean conceals countless reptilian creatures yearning for the land. With each sacrifice, Argenta's vow to protect the land from this threat was reforged. A memory shows a young Diello walking alone through a rainy graveyard. He recalls hating the loss so much he could scream, showing him sobbing alone in his room. His uncle, Radias, finds the young Lord Diello crying. Young Diello explains he hates the sea for taking everyone from him. Radius tells him to be strong, as many wish to see him fall. In the memory, Radius sternly instructs him to grow used to sacrifice and trust no one. He tells the boy that to survive, he must harden himself. Young Diello's tear-filled eyes look up as he whispers his uncle's name. In the present, Diello believes he's thinking of Radius because he's at the site his uncle commands. Gripping his horse's reins, he admits he has a bad feeling. Leading his men, Diello rides forward, hoping his instincts are wrong. On the battlefield, Radius clashes his flaming sword against a sea monster. He struggles as the creature's jaw locks onto his fiery blade. Radius narrowly dodges the creature's sweeping attack. With a determined gaze, Radius prepares for the next assault. Letting his guard down for a moment, he wonders if this is the end. A monster's shadow falls over a defeated Radius as it lets out a triumphant roar. But a voice calls out to Lord Argenta as Diello arrives, hand wreathed in flame. Diello draws his sword, ready for battle. Astride his horse, he unleashes a blazing charge into the horde of monsters. The soldiers erupt in cheers, shouting that their head has arrived. A gray-haired commander smiles with relief at the sight of Lord Argenta. Engulfed in fire, Diello rallies his troops, declaring Argenta's flame still burns. He raises his flaming sword high and orders all units to attack. The sky fills with the chaos of the ensuing battle. Creatures screech in agony as they are consumed by the fiery assault. As his men wonder if the battle is over, a shadowy clawed hand emerges from the darkness. A new wave of larger, more fearsome monsters emerges from the depths. The men are stunned to see a monster using water magic, as Diello realizes their numbers have multiplied. Diello unleashes a massive wave of fire toward the new threat. The inferno swirls into a powerful vortex of destruction. But the fire is met and stopped by an immense wall of water. Diello stands before a towering tsunami, his attack rendered useless. He realizes with dread that his flames cannot break through the water wall. The water monster stands triumphant, surrounded by its legion of sea creatures. Diello recalls reports from the desert. He concludes that the rumors of monsters using flame magic in Cartiel's territory must have been true. He reflects that, unlike the head of Cartiel, he hasn't bloomed and can only hold them off, realizing the reinforcements he called for will be useless. Radius steps forward, telling Diello he will go into overdrive to hold them off. Diello grips his sword, knowing it was his mistake to request a small unit and that his uncle's words will be his last. Radius formally requests permission from Lord Argenta to engage. Diello hesitates, agonizing over the decision to let his uncle sacrifice himself. He begins to speak, his resolve wavering. Suddenly, Croya's voice cuts through the tension, shouting his name. Both Diello and Radius turn, startled by her sudden appearance. Diello looks back at Croya as he leads his forces into the desert. Stunned, he calls out her name in disbelief. A giant water serpent bursts from the wave as Croya faces it down. Croya confidently summons tendrils of pure water magic. She stands alone, parting a colossal tsunami in the middle of the desert. Croya looks on, her expression a mix of awe and determination. Diello watches her display of power with an intrigued smirk. With intense focus, Croya gathers water into her hand. A whoosh sounds as she directs the immense wave forward on her command. Diello dismisses her attack, but a sea monster is caught off guard, letting out a sharp screech as it struck. Croya stands resolute amidst a horde of monstrous creatures. A narrator realizes Croya Aloze is controlling the water as she prepares to draw her sword. With a mighty swoosh, her water attack crashes down, slicing through the monsters. The sea creatures are torn apart by the torrent of water. One monster lets out a final agonizing roar. Diello, Radius, and their men stare in utter disbelief. Croya looks at her hands, equally shocked by her own power. She realizes her powers grow stronger near their source, stunned by the sheer increase. The water swirls with immense energy between her palms. Croya smiles, pleased she can shape the power so easily and glad she kept practicing. She reflects that her reincarnation must have strengthened the original Croya's once weak powers. The knight informs her the preparations are complete, and her army awaits the command to advance. Croya smiles, satisfied that her show of force has gathered a much larger army than expected. She swiftly mounts her white steed. With a determined gaze, Croya orders all units to advance to Sector 4. The horses gallop, their hooves thundering across the land. As she rides, she notes how natural it feels, crediting the original Croya's talent. A soldier informs her they'll reach Sector 4 shortly, and she acknowledges the report. She resolves to win today's battle for the sake of the future, despite her uncertainty. Riding toward the coast, she feels her power stir as she nears the sea. Her eyes gleam with power as she feels the Alo's blood within her awaken. A brilliant light flares across the battlefield. She arrives to find herself surrounded by looming monsters. Radius and a soldier watch in awe, realizing she single-handedly controlled the wave and saved them. Croya herself is amazed by the surge in her abilities this close to the ocean. She wonders how powerful other Aloze members are, and worries about the powerful Pentas Alos from the original story. Croya ponders how the story might change if she survives and continues to wield her power. A monstrous silhouette with glowing yellow eyes looms behind her. She gasps, sensing a new, terrible presence. A dark creature cries out as it is blasted by her water magic. The soldiers murmur in shock, wondering at the incredible power of the Duke of Alo's if a mere family member is this strong. Croya turns and sees Diello standing nearby, looking completely bewildered. Diello stares, speechless at the unbelievable sight before him. He wonders if the magic user vanished, then realizes the danger is not over. Diello shouts that the enemy is hiding as the wave grows larger, and one of his men screams in terror. With a grim expression, Croya confirms she can see them. A sinister, multi-limbed creature is revealed, lurking deep within the wave. Raising her hand, Croya declares their attempt to hide is useless. The monster is violently ripped from the water and exposed. Seizing the opportunity, Croya prepares to unleash another powerful blast of water. A monster screeches, as Croya realizes water control makes for an easy takedown. She narrows her eyes, resolving to unleash even more power. Turning, she is surprised to see Diello has returned. Whoosh! A brilliant flame erupts in Diello's hand. He unleashes a massive pillar of fire into the sky. The fiery inferno rains down upon the remaining monsters. The ground erupts in a blazing torrent. Kaboom! A powerful explosion obliterates the enemy. The soldiers erupt into cheers of victory. Diello declares the water monster dead and orders the battlefield secured. Stunned by his power, Croya feels her strength give way and begins to fall. Diello catches her in his arms, calling her name with alarm. He looks at her with concern, questioning why she came. She replies she wanted to be useful, and he softly thanks her. Croya reflects that she misjudged him, thinking his beauty meant weakness. She realizes with a start that he's not the man she knew. Later, Croya rests peacefully in a grand, ornate bed. A hand gently brushes through her purple hair. Diello sits beside her, watching over her as she sleeps. He looks down at her, a silent, thoughtful expression on his face. At sunset, a soldier reports the battlefield is clear, and Diello orders their departure. When a soldier offers to escort Croya, Diello intervenes, saying he will carry her himself. As they ride through a forest, Diello is captivated by a strange, heavy scent. He recognizes it as the scent of the sea he once hated. Holding her close, he finds her scent intoxicating, correcting himself to think only of Croya. Back in her room, he admits to himself that their victory was all thanks to her. He recalls his vow to never form attachments after losing so many but wonders about someone free from the sea of death. An image of Croya commanding the waves fills his mind as he considers someone who can bravely face it. Tenderly holding a lock of her hair, he resolves something in his heart. He gently brings her hair to his lips, making a silent promise. Croya's eyes flutter open as she realizes she's safely back in her room. She feels completely drained of energy, her body weak and her mouth dry. She understands this exhaustion is the side effect of using her family's power. A maid enters her room with a pitcher of water. PL is surprised to see her awake, and Kroya confirms she just woke up. PL offers to call a doctor, but Kroya waves it off, asking something more important. Her first concern is for Serradius, asking if he is safe. When PL seems confused, Kroya clarifies she means the 4th Sector's commander. PL reports that Serradius only has minor injuries and already visited her. Kroya is shocked to learn how long she was unconscious. PL credits Kroya's support for the minimal damage, and Kroya is relieved to have helped. She thinks to herself that her plan succeeded, glad that Radius's survival will aid Argenta. Finally sitting up, Kroya asks about Diello's whereabouts. PL explains he had to leave on a tight schedule, but made time to visit first, prompting Kroya to ask her to pass on a message that she is fine. PL agrees, but insists on calling a doctor as per Diello's strict orders, and Kroya concedes. PL asks if all this was for Argenta, leaving Kroya thoughtful. Kroya quietly repeats the phrase, pondering its meaning. An older man in a suit arrives at her door, also declaring it is for Argenta. The doctor explains he is there for a brief examination, and Kroya agrees. After the checkup, the doctor informs the maids there are no major issues and she just needs rest. He advises her to call if she feels any discomfort, and she thanks him. An older man arrives, also declaring it is for Argenta. Kroya notes the repetition of the phrase as a knock sounds at her door. She recalls various people, from soldiers to maids, all declaring for Argenta. She wonders aloud if this is comradeship, noting the different atmosphere. PL enters with a knowing smile as Kroya asks her why things have changed. PL explains that Kroya charged into battle more fearlessly than any Argenta would. She reveals that the people of Argenta believe Kroya has fought her first battle. PL explains the first battle is a trial to become a true Argenta, a deadly test of flame magic where only survivors are accepted. Kroya is shocked, realizing it's a brutal survivor-die system. Though unsettled, she now understands the subtle camaraderie among the Argenta people. She considers the strange feeling of becoming an Argenta, even as she plans to leave. She firms her resolve to depart, knowing the real pharaoh will soon appear. Recalling images from the original story, she decides it's time to start preparing. Kroya calls for PL, who answers promptly from outside the room. Sitting up in bed, Kroya wears a confident and determined smile. The scene shifts to a starry night, deep within the continent. Kroya daydreams of a future where she can live a full life in abundance and safety. She traces her finger over a map, stopping at a place called Daisy Forest. She notes that while the forest is currently dangerous, a future waterway will make it prime real estate. Thrilled at the prospect of a jackpot investment, she wonders how she will get the money. Suddenly, a panicked Diello bursts through her door, shouting her name. Startled, Kroya looks up at his sudden and frantic appearance. He grips a chair, his voice filled with relief as he admits he was worried. He explains that trouble in the coastal regions delayed his return to her side. With a slight smile, Kroya asks if he's apologizing for missing her waking up. He sincerely apologizes and thanks her, while she tells him it's fine, knowing he was busy. After hearing from Nies, he asks with concern if she is truly okay. She reassures him that she is fine, attributing her collapse to the shock of using her powers. He acknowledges her sacrifice, stating that many in Argentia are alive thanks to her. He calls her power fascinating, admitting to himself he couldn't stop her if a similar threat appeared. Blushing slightly, a flustered Diello wonders what he should do about Kroya. She declares she will help again, reminding him they are allies until House Elos is gone, and he quietly thanks her. He presents her with a letter, suggesting she might need to see it. She takes the wax-sealed letter from him with a questioning look. She reads the letter, which details her father's request to meet with her once a month. Annoyed, she realizes its true purpose is to monitor his manipulative plans for Diello. As she reads, a sudden thought makes her pause. She recalls a clause in her marriage contract granting her 50 of Argentia's profits, realizing it's her source of funds. As a cute chibi Diello asks if she's okay, she quickly dismisses his concern. Diello's gaze falls on the map in her lap, and he asks what it is. She explains her dream is to live near Daisy Forest after she eventually leaves Argentia. Her words leave Diello speechless, his expression turning grim. Noticing his sudden silence, Kroya calls out his name with concern. Diello's expression remains shadowed and unreadable. He tells her he has to finish some work, while she encourages him to go to bed, noting how hard he works. He clenches his fist behind his back, his emotions hidden. Diello walks alone down a long, moonlit corridor, lost in thought. Her stated desire to leave Argentia and live near Daisy Forest echoes in his mind. He continues his somber walk, his thoughts fixated on her mention of Daisy Forest. He briefly wonders if she plans to face Argentia alone, but quickly dismisses the notion as too reckless. Diello questions if she really has to leave, wondering why she is smart about one thing but not another. He believes Croia is too rooted in Argentia to be allowed to leave, and that she'll be discarded once the real Firo arrives. He clenches his fist, admitting the plan was to kill her, but finds himself hesitating. He recalls her cooperation, her saving so many, and her desirable power as reasons for his hesitation. His final thought is of a smiling, pink-haired woman in a yellow gown, the real Pharaoh. Diello looks down, lost in his conflicting thoughts. He admits to himself that if Pharaoh's arrival is delayed, he'd be fine with things staying as they are. With a slight smile, he decides this situation might be better than what was planned. Walking down the hall, he muses that she is far too good for House Aloes and shines brilliantly. He imagines that if she were truly Pharaoh, she would shine even more brightly. Later, Croia waves from a carriage to a man in a vest, promising to return safely. She smiles confidently, telling him not to worry because she is a good actor. The brown-haired man smiles and says he understands. As she departs in her carriage, the man tells her he will be waiting. A new scene begins under the name Diello Argenta, surrounded by dark roses. She rereads the letter from her father, requesting their monthly meeting, wondering about his true purpose. A man in an ornate suit, flanked by guards, formally welcomes her as Croia. Croia curtsies and gives a polite, rehearsed speech about her happy new life before her father suggests they talk privately. As they walk, her father and his men internally mock her greeting as a shameless act, questioning her scheme. The group enters a grand, ornate reception hall. Her father dismisses her attendance, asking for privacy for their cozy reunion. Her red-haired knight and two maids remain silent and stoic. Her father laughs, mockingly asking if Argenta forbids a father from seeing his daughter alone. He leans towards a maid with a threatening smirk, asking if she thinks he'd harm his own daughter. A spark of defiance appears as Croia interrupts the tense standoff. Croia calmly tells her attendants how they should respond, and they bow in unison. Her father leads her away, leaving her concerned attendants behind. Croia firmly instructs her people to wait outside the mansion until she is done. The attendants look on with serious, worried expressions. Seated across from her, her father comments on the rumors of her and Diello's closeness. Croia reports she's sharing a room with Diello, but thinks to herself that his naivete and the presence of others make the situation feel wrong. She lies that Diello is slow to open up because she's from Aloars, but her father questions her effort. She insists she is trying, explaining it takes more than just a physical act to win him over, and her father agrees. Her father crudely suggests she use physical affection, prompting her to think he's even worse than she imagined. A dark, suffocating energy emanates from her father, causing Croia to feel overwhelmed. Her father magically manipulates her tea, angrily questioning if she failed to understand his order to seduce Diello. Shaken, she internally insists that she is trying to follow his orders. He scoffs at her efforts, demanding results, as she privately admits things are not going according to plan. He cruelly speculates about Diello's virility, while she thinks he's vile trash, but his assumption is wrong. Croia explains that Diello's heart isn't in it, while internally apologizing to him for her lies, knowing she must survive. She claims she must approach Diello slowly to avoid scaring him off, then announces she has a strategy. When he asks what it is, she explains that to win Diello's heart, she needs funds, which she currently lacks. She desperately states that even a small fraction of financial support would be enough. Her father smirks, agreeing to redirect funds to her, but with a condition. He demands that by their next meeting, she must have achieved better results. Croia agrees, relieved that her funding problem is now solved. Having gotten what she wanted, Croia formally announces her departure. Once alone, she reflects that she managed to get through the threatening encounter. She pauses, a sudden question dawning on her. One of her father's men calls out, reminding her of the name Diello Argenta, which is engraved on her back. Her father holds a swirling red substance, declaring it needs to be the red one. Croia stares in silent horror at his words. After her meeting, Her attendants and carriage await her outside the mansion at sunset. PL watches with alarm as Croya is escorted from the mansion. Croya stumbles weakly toward the carriage as a worried PL calls out to her. Croya urgently tells her maid that they must leave right now, and the maid agrees. From inside the carriage, she gives the order to depart, which is confirmed by the driver and maid. PL notes with concern that her madam's complexion looks bad. Both maids anxiously ask if she is all right as she slumps over in her seat. Croya collapses unconscious, surrounded by an illusion of red spider lilies as blood stains her dress. Her two maids look on in panic as she lies pale and still in PL's lap. Croya gasps in pain as PL looks down in shock at her own blood-covered hand. PL asks permission to check the wound, and Croya weakly consents. The maids are horrified to find Diello's name freshly and bloodily carved into Croya's back. PL asks if this is a repeat of last time, and Croya confirms she knew Diello's name was carved there. Looking at her blood-soaked hands, PL thinks that this is too cruel. PL vows to begin first aid and ensure a smooth ride as Croya thanks her and the carriage departs. Elsewhere, a pensive Diello checks his pocket watch, waiting by a window. He looks out into the night, wondering what happened to delay their return. A servant announces the lady's arrival, and Diello notes that she is late. He walks purposefully toward the entryway to meet her. Arriving with her maids, Croya is surprised to see Diello still awake, and he greets her with a grim look. Diello trembles slightly, a look of pained realization on his face. He states that she had it carved again, and she quietly asks if he knew. Diello says he just found out, then gently takes her hand, telling Croya to tend to her wounds. Croya forces a smile, assuring him she's fine, but Diello looks horrified as she mentions the slow, internal healing. With a gentle smile, Diello asks Croya Allure to treat it properly one more time. She agrees, and he internally marvels at how her smile drives him insane after all she's endured. In her bedroom, Croya yelps as Diello tends to her back, and he asks if it's too painful. He promises to be quick, but she tells him no, her face hidden. She clarifies that it stings and asks him to hurry. Croya winces, saying even her arm hurts, which makes Diello pause and look closely at her back. He notices bruises on her shoulder and angrily wonders what they are. His eyes widen as he sees her back is covered in bruises and abuse marks around the carved name. Diello falls silent, his expression hardening with unspoken fury. His face is cast in shadow, as Croya calls his name, sensing the sudden change. Lying on the bed, she asks Diello if something is bothering him. He looks away for a moment, composing himself with a slight smile. Turning back, he laughs lightly and dismisses her concern, saying it's nothing. He gently places his hand on her back again, promising to finish quickly, and she agrees. Croya gives him a grateful smile, but Diello tells her thanks are not necessary. She looks confused by his serious tone and asks what he means. Utterly flustered by his request, she exclaims in shock. He explains that clothing will irritate her wounds, and she internally agrees but feels awkward, questioning if she's the strange one. She thinks about how genuinely pure he seems as he sits on the bed. Diello takes her hand, reminding her of their promise and telling her not to worry. He gently clarifies their agreement, just holding hands while they sleep. He seals the promise with a soft kiss on her hand. Diello looks down at her with intense, unwavering eyes. Croya looks up, her heart pounding with anticipation. He gently takes her hand in his. She shyly agrees to his unspoken request. Croya holds his hand, her heart fluttering as she looks at him. Diello watches her with a soft, knowing smile. She looks up from her pillow and asks him a quiet question. He leans over her, suddenly admitting he can't go through with it, leaving her utterly shocked and confused by his words. He pulls back with a serious and determined expression. Croya lies in bed, her heart racing with uncertainty. As he reaches for her, she flinches, caught off guard. He surprises her by reaching for a pillow instead. He offers her a pillow, thoughtfully suggesting Croya hug it for comfort while she sleeps on her side, leaving her bewildered by his gentle gesture. Hugging the pillow, she laughs awkwardly and thanks Diello for his thoughtfulness. He carefully pulls the blanket over her, telling her to stay warm. He teases her for being surprised again, and she tells him not to laugh. He gently takes her hand again. Diello wishes Croya a good night, and she returns the sentiment. Morning light streams into the quiet room. Croya slowly blinks her eyes open. She wakes to find Diello still fast asleep beside her. Watching him, she finds it unusual for him to sleep in, and wonders if he was that tired. A knock sounds as a maid opens the bedroom door. Croya quietly signals for the maid to be silent, protecting Diello's rest. The maid silently asks if there's something urgent. Croya remembers that the final inspection needs to be signed off. She decides to handle it, reflecting on his attentive care. Now dressed, she resolves to return the favor, feeling hopeful that his gentle treatment will help her wound heal quickly. She quietly leaves the room, observed by her two maids. One of the maids asks her lady how she is feeling. Croya assures her maid she's much better and will handle the final approval for the shadow distribution on Diello's behalf. She explains that she cannot rest, as it would raise suspicions about her visit to House Allure and that their deception must be thorough. Her maid agrees, but urges her to tell them if it becomes too difficult, and Croya promises she will. Diello bolts upright in bed, suddenly awake and calling for Croya. He finds a note from Croya explaining she left to handle his work as repayment for his kindness, and he sighs in resignation. He touches his lip, a small, thoughtful smile appearing. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he softly says her name. The scene shifts to a sunny garden, where Croya works with her maid. From a balcony above, Diello watches her work. A green-haired man reports that the Duke of Allure sent an allowance for Croya, prompting Diello to ask how much it was. The man reveals it was only 1/10 of the usual amount, which makes Diello thoughtful. Diello commands his aide to continue watching her. He deduces that even 1/10 is a huge sum, and since she won't use it for luxuries, she most likely intends to purchase the daisy forest, Diello concludes with a confident smirk. As Croya works, Diello reflects that Pentas Allure, the next head of her house, is rumored to be more capable. He muses on House Allure's elemental advantage over his own fire-aligned house, especially since he lacks a Firo. Diello reasons that if House Allure were truly more powerful, declaring war would have been a more direct strategy than using a false Firo. His thoughts return to her as he murmurs her name, Croya. Diello reflects that she only claimed to be a card to catch House Allure off guard. He clenches his fist, recalling she never mentioned being so desirable after witnessing her power at sea. As a serene Croya looks on, he wonders how he could possibly not want her. Diello smiles, admitting aloud that he does not want to lose Croya. As he gazes out over the estate, a voice calls out, "My lord." A butler approaches, informing him that someone wishes to meet with him in secret. Diello questions the need for secrecy, which the butler confirms is necessary. The butler reveals the visitor claims to be the true Pharos, someone Diello already knows, leaving him stunned. Walking through the halls with his aide, Diello asks if they have checked the Pharaoh mark. He and his aide watch as a servant in a red cape approaches a pair of large doors. The doors open to reveal a woman with long brown hair waiting inside. Diello's eyes widen in disbelief as he recognizes the traitor of Argenta. The woman, Benia, sits with a thoughtful and confident expression. Benia greets Duke Diello Argenta, remarking that it has been a long time since they met as children. Diello internally seethes, identifying Benia as the traitor who sold out his family and her own parents to the enemy, questioning why he must love her. Benia tells him not to stare, declares that she is Pharaoh, and reveals Diello's name marked on her arm. She tells him not to blame his men for her intrusion. She explains that no one could stop her as she materializes a swirling orange liquid in her hand. Diello is puzzled, wondering how a person from Argenta could be using the power of water. He closes his eyes, dismissing the thought. He realizes her murky water power is different from the pure power used by Croya and Eloge. Benia adds that Duke Eloge told her not to touch him, and his men are not incompetent. She leans forward, declaring that Duke Eloge's promise not to harm him is a blatant lie. Diello sips his drink, wondering if she's unaware that Duke Eloge already sent Croya to him. He deduces that if Eloge knew Benia was the real Pharaoh, he would have acted already, and wonders what secret she's hiding. Benia expresses surprise as she drops her conjured water into a teacup. She recalls thinking that Diello Argenta once seemed too weak to even light a flower. Placing a hand on his shoulder, she finishes her thought, stating that he killed her parents. Benia thinks Duke Eloge believes her plan worked, but she knows the true circumstances of what passed between the houses. Leaning close, she accuses him of letting the Duke and Duchess die when he could have saved them, demanding to know why it was him, her Pharaoh. She smiles slyly and turns the question back on him, asking, "Well, why me?" Diello internally despairs, questioning why he must fall for someone like her when she is not the one he wants. Benia says she's not so bad, pointing out that she has kept his secret. Diello realizes she stayed quiet only to protect herself, but she framed it so nicely. Looking out the window at Croya, Benya asks about the fake pharaoh in the grand wedding. She taunts him about his purity and states his lack of surprise proves he knew Croya was a fake. Pointing toward Croya, Benya offers to kill the fake for him, but Diello remains grimly silent. Diello calmly asks what the rush is, and she hesitates. Benya explains that becoming the Duchess will grant her a life of wealth and end a decade of being chaste. She glares, reminding him of Argenta's need to secure Pharaoh and urging him to hurry. As Diello stands to leave, she threatens to spread rumors if he delays. Diello stops her, stating that he finds it amusing to watch a rabbit run blindly into a beast's mouth. He swiftly grabs her, leaving her stunned by his sudden action and confident smirk. He asks if she remembers when his own life was once in danger. Benya mockingly calls him weak, a claim he promptly denies. He summons a blazing fire in his hand, explaining that those with strong bloodlines are rarely born with weak bodies. Engulfed in his flames, Benya recalls knowing that the Duke's mark would pass to a new, powerful pharaoh. Diello smirks menacingly, asking who poisoned him, the next Duke, when the old pharaoh was deemed useless. He asks why he should hesitate to kill those who tried to kill him, including her. She sweats, banking on her status as pharaoh to protect her. Diello relents and tells her to prepare for the wedding, stating Argenta must welcome the real pharaoh before it's too late. Elsewhere, two men discuss the situation, agreeing it's too early for a wedding while Eloge and Cartier still apply pressure and traitors remain within Argenta. He internally notes that if Krua learns the real pharaoh has appeared, their contract will end and she will leave. Diello wishes Krua had been the real pharaoh, questioning what Benya possesses that Krua doesn't, and lamenting his fate. He resolves to investigate the traitor's life to understand how one is chosen as pharaoh. Thinking a traitor is unfit for Argenta, he suddenly grabs a shocked Benya. As she screams his name, Diello thinks to himself that he has started to want perfection. He pulls back a curtain, revealing he is watching Croya in the garden below. A soft, knowing smile spreads across his face as he continues to watch her.